This is a fascinating story. I've heard lots of instances where parents have lived together after they've split up, but before they were divorced for financial reasons. It's just too expensive and they have to settle who owns the house. But I haven't heard of many parents living together after the divorce is settled. Is this a common problem?
It never used to be. It is becoming, in a sense, more common, and it's all because of the economy. Let's face it, two cannot live as cheaply as one together. And so in today's economy, lower job, hard to find jobs. And when you do, man, you need 2 or 3 jobs just to pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
So we are seeing more folks choosing to, in a sense, cohabit, not intimately, but to still share the house, even post-separation, even post-divorce.
Now, this particular piece that sparked my curiosity on this doesn't say why the parents chose to live together for 10 years. But if I'm going to assume that maybe it was because they thought that would be better for the children, that's an argument I hear a lot from divorcing or parents who are thinking about splitting up. Is it better for the children, for the parents to stay together, just to stick it out?
Good question. So when we look at the outcome for children of separated parents and we say, why do some do well, why do some do poorly? What's the deciding factor? Is it the school they go to, the amount of time with one parent versus the other, whether we feed them hot dogs or tofu? None of those things really matter. The real predictor for the outcome of children of separated parents is the level of conflict between those parents. So kids who grow up in that unremitting conflict will do or tend to, or they're at greater risk of doing more poorly than those kids who live in peaceful homes or whose parents live apart and then the kids live in peace.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So, this thing about staying together for the sake of the kids. Listen, if you're staying together and it is a war zone, that's worse.
What should parents do if this is the case? Because I know more and more it is the case where parents are planning to split, but for legal and financial reasons, they're living in the same house. The husband maybe lives in the basement, the wife upstairs. What should they do in order to have the most positive impact on their children?
There's an old saying, tall fences make better neighbors. And what we're talking about there is having good boundaries, having rules in place. And so if the parents can negotiate a set of rules that stipulates who is where, when, and who's responsible for the kids when, and assuming they can stick to that, then, yeah, by all means, live under one roof and spare the kids the strife because you're going to stay out of each other's hair.
One of the things that the author brings up is that she was well into her sort of dating relationship, having moved away, before she noticed that she was starting to behave in exactly the same way that her parents were. She found herself at 3 o'clock in the morning screaming at her boyfriend at the time, noticing that, well, wait, whoa, this sounds just like my parents. If you're a kid, how do you set yourself up for success in life if you've gone through a bad breakup with your parents?
It takes some degree of moving away from, stepping out from, so that you can see where you came from more clearly. I'll give you a personal example. I grew up at Bathurst and Wilson in Toronto. That was the Jewish part of the city back in the 50s and 60s. And so, believe it or not, I thought the whole world was Jewish because, well, my whole world was. And we call that a logical fallacy. It's logical because, it makes sense how I thought that way. It's fallacy because it isn't true. So let's apply that to kids growing up between warring, fighting parents. That's their reality. They get a sense that this is how people cope, get along, and settle conflict. Well, now you get into a different environment, and my different environment, we moved to Thornhill when it was predominantly white, yet I still thought the whole world was Jewish. And so these kids grow up and they still think this is how you get along, this is how you resolve things, until you realize one day, hey, it's not working. And those strategies of childhood or the thinking that we adopt in childhood doesn't necessarily fit with the world we then live in as adults.
Yeah, but it is, you're giving me hope, though, that I can change my behavior. My parents divorced and it didn't work out well for them, but there's a way for me not to repeat that pattern in my own life?
Absolutely. And so, people come to see me for that like all the time. And what we have to help them understand is, what did you experience growing up, and what is your thinking as a result of that? What are those experiences? How are you trying to apply what you learned then to today's situation? And let's ask ourselves, is it working or not working? And when we realize it's not working, then we can say, how about trying this? How about this strategy? How about this other strategy? How about learning to take turns, learning to compromise, learning to set different priorities? And so come adulthood, and once the child is no longer in that environment, we can introduce them to a whole world of other things to do such that their adult intimate relationships can then be successful.
Gary Derenfeld, with you're a social worker at yoursocialworker.com. Did I get that right?
Yeah, yoursocialworker.com.
Thanks very much. I wish I knew you then, because I did repeat all the mistakes of my parents. Maybe another session is due.
Well, maybe this was helpful to you.
Thanks very much.
All the best.